It is so hard to be the bigger person, right? Whenever someone is being mean to us, it is the most difficult thing in the whole world to be nice back to them. And why should we, right? They don't deserve that. They deserve for us to treat them exactly the same way that they're treating us. And so why don't we? Why don't we just treat them exactly the way that they deserve to be treated in exactly the way that they're treating us? And the reason is because we don't want to be like them, right? We don't want to be that kind of person. And so, even though it is difficult, even though they don't deserve it, because we want to be better than that, then we work to do that, right? We try to rise above, even though it is difficult, and even though that other person may not deserve our kindness in return for their rudeness. And that is what David is able to do in our story today. He shows us how we can rise above and what that really looks like. And he does it not in the face of somebody being mean, but in the face of someone trying to kill him. And so, if you remember our past lessons, David is on the run from Saul. Saul, the king, is trying to kill David. And he's been in hiding for quite a while now. And he's hiding in Adullam, but there's a town called Kilia that is just a few miles away, just inside the Philistine border. And the people come to David and they say, hey, the Philistines are attacking our town and eating all of the grain off of the threshing floor. Will you come and help us? And it's kind of weird that they would go to David because they have a king. Why would they not go to the king? Maybe it's because David is closer to them. You know, this is much closer to David than it is to Saul in Gibeah. And so maybe that's why. Maybe they go to David because David is the warrior. He's the one that's been fighting the Philistines all of this time. And so who knows? Who knows why they went to David instead of their king? But they do. They go to him and they say, hey, these people are, eating all of our grain. Can you do something about it? And so David immediately goes to God and he says, should I do something about this? Should I go down and attack the Philistines? And God says, yes, go down and save the town of Kilia. And so David goes to his men. Remember he's had hundreds of men that have been following him and they're all staying there with him. And he goes to them and he says, hey, I want to go and attack this town, attack the Philistines and defend this town. And this is what they say to him. They say, this is 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse 3. And they say, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more will we be afraid in Kilia against the army of the Philistines? So he's like, they're all just thinking, do you not remember that we're on the run? Like, first of all, we're hiding from Saul and we're already scared in this place. And then you want us to go to attack the Philistines. And so now we have to come out of hiding, risk being seen by Saul, and also risk getting killed by the Philistine army. Yeah, I don't think so. What are you thinking here, David? We're in hiding. And so David's like, yeah, that was my first instinct. Like, I am a warrior, right? That is what I do. And so his first instinct is to go and fight. But he's like, maybe I was wrong. I'm going to go back. I'm going to ask God again. And so he asked God again. He says, are you sure that we should go down? We are in hiding from Saul. And God said, no, I want you to go and I want you to free the city and I will give you victory. And so David goes back to the people and he's like, hey, I talked to God. God says that he's going to bring us victory. And so we need to go. And, the first thing that I thought about is that this was David's very first instinct. His instinct was to do what he's always done. His instinct was to be a warrior because that's who he is, right? And so when there was a fight, he was supposed to go and defend that place. That was his job. But even though that was his normal instinct and that was his job, he still went to God before he did anything about it. And so, even if it is our instinct, even if it is our job, even if this is what we would normally do in a normal situation, it's good for us to ask God, because maybe God doesn't want us to do that right now. Or maybe He wants someone else to do it, even though normally we're the ones that do it. Or maybe He wants to do it, us to do it in a different way than we normally do it. And so we always need to ask God, even if it is, the position He's put us in. David was a warrior because God wanted him to be a warrior, but maybe God didn't want him to fight now. And so David asked God. God says, yes, go down. I'm going to give you victory. And so they went down, they attacked Keilah. And in verse 5, it says that they fought with the Philistines and they brought away their livestock and struck them with a great blow. And so now we get a little bit more of the story, right? It's telling us that he not only chases the Philistines out of the town, but he chases their livestock out of the town. And so now we realize they weren't just going and grabbing bags of grain and bringing it back to their land. What they were doing is bringing their animals over there to eat their grain. And so David kicks them out. And then we find out in verse 7 that Saul is told that David is there. And not only does Saul find out where he is, but he says, which is so crazy. Like, I'm wondering if he really truly believes this or if he's just saying this to the people to get them to go and fight David. But he says, God has given him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars. And so he actually says he thinks that God has given David into his hand, which I just don't know how he could even think that. So I feel like he's just telling the army so that they'll go and fight David. But either way, we know that this place has a fence all around it and only one way in and one way out. So he thinks that he has David trapped. Meanwhile, David knows that Saul is looking for him. David knows he's somehow gotten wind that Saul knows where he is. And so the priest had come down to where David was, and he had the Urim and the Thummim. If you remember, these are the things that they would use to find out God's will about stuff. And so we don't know exactly what these things were, but something like casting a die or something, and it would tell them yes or no or whatever. And so David calls Abiathar, the priest, to him, and he says, bring me the Urim and the Thummim. I need to ask God a question. And so David goes to God and asks him in verse 10, O Lord, the God of Israel, your servant has surely heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city on my account. Will the men of Keilah surrender me at his hand, and will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord, the God of Israel, please tell your servant. And God said, he will come down. And so then David says, okay, well, are the people going to surrender me to him? And God says, yeah, they are, which must have been heartbreaking. He literally just saved this town. He just saved this town from the Philistines, and now they won't save him from the man that's coming after them. Now, granted, I realize that that's their king, but they could at least just, hide him or something. But no, they're going to give him over, God says. And so while Saul is on his way to David, David leaves, and it says that he flees with 600 men. So he had 400 men before, so we know that he's gained 200 since the last time that we got a number. And it says that they left Keilah and they went to the hill country in the wilderness of Ziph. And since they were gone whenever Saul got there, Saul gave up and left and went back home. And so David is there, and Saul doesn't know where he is, but Jonathan does. Jonathan finds out where David is, and he goes to David, and it says he strengthened his hand in God. And so this is what Jonathan says to him in verse 17. Do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father will not find you. You shall be the king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Saul my father knows this. So he's trying to encourage David, don't lose heart. I know that my dad's seeking after you, but I do not believe that he is going to find you. I believe that God has granted you his throne, and I think he knows that too. And whenever you get the throne, I'll be right there by your side. I am still keeping my commitment to you. And so it says that the two of them made their covenant together again to be loyal to one another and to protect one another. And then David went back into hiding and Jonathan went back home. But the Ziphites, the people that lived in the wilderness of Ziph, they go to Saul in Gibeah, which is like 25 miles away, and they're telling Saul, hey, we know where David is. You should come and find him. And Saul's like, I've fallen for this before. He's slippery. Every time that someone tells me where he is and I go down to get him, he's not there. So go back, keep your eye on him, make sure that you know where he is, and then come back and get me. Basically, someone needs to keep their eye on him, and the other people can come and get me so that I'll know exactly where he is. And David knew that Saul was looking for him, and so he's gone to Moen now. And so when they get back, he's not exactly where they thought he was, but I guess they search him out, find him, and tell Saul because Saul does eventually come. And it ends up that Saul goes on one side of the mountain and David and his men are on the other side of the mountain. And it says that David was hurrying to get away from Saul, but as Saul and his men were closing in on David to capture him, then it says that a messenger came to Saul saying, hurry and come, for the Philistines have made a raid against the land. And so Saul quit pursuing David and went to pursue the Philistines. Do you think that that's a coincidence? A coincidence that just as they were closing in on David, all of a sudden a messenger comes to Saul and says, the Philistines are attacking, we got to go? I don't think that's a coincidence. I think God orchestrated that whole thing because God is protecting David just as he told him he would. And so he's been able to evade him so far, but now that Saul has caught up with him, God is rescuing him supernaturally. He is causing the Philistines to attack or for the messenger to think that the Philistines are attacking right at the moment when Saul is about to capture David. And so he has to leave. And so it says that David called the place the Rock of Escape, which, makes sense. And then he went up from there and he lived in the strongholds of Engedi. And this is like 14 miles away from where he had been before. He's trying to get as far away from, where Saul knows where he is. And this is on the shores of the Dead Sea. They say that there was a luscious vineyard there and a freshwater spring there. And so this is a good place for him to hide out. He's got everything that he needs, and it's far away from Saul. So, chapter 23 ends with David getting away, and we think that everything is fine. But after Saul gets done chasing the Philistines out of the land, it says that he finds out that David has run to Engedi, and so he takes 3,000 chosen men and goes to seek after him in the wild goat rocks. So, what I think of whenever I think of a hilly, rocky place that the goats are is, a lot of little places to hide. Whenever you see goats climbing up on these rocks, there's always these crevices and, little valleys and hills and all of that where they can hide. And so it sounds like they're really going to have to search him out. He's amongst this area that he has a lot of places to hide. And so it says that he came to the sheepfolds, which is just the place where the shepherds would keep the sheep at night to keep them away from predators and stuff. And it says that Saul goes inside of a cave to go to the bathroom. But the problem is that David is hiding inside of that cave. And so he's deep within the cave, but he finds out that Saul is there. And David's men say to him, "Here is the day of which the Lord said to you, Behold, I will give your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as it seems good to you." And so his friends are like, "Look, God gave him right into your hand. You didn't even have to go look for him. He came into the cave that you were hiding in. Go get him." And so it says, David arose and stealthily cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Then afterwards, David starts feeling guilty. And he goes to his men and he says, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed." It's kind of confusing because he calls Saul his Lord and then God the Lord. And so when he's saying, God forbid that I would do something like this to my Lord, he's talking about Saul, that he would do something like this to Saul, who is God's anointed. He said, "I should not put out my hand against him, seeing that he is the Lord's anointed." And so he persuaded his men with these words, and he did not permit them to attack Saul. So he started feeling guilty, and he's like, "I do not have a right. God put him in position to be the king, and it is not my place to take him out of that. I'm not going to do anything to him, and I'm not going to let y'all do anything either." And that's good that he's telling his men this, but he's not satisfied with that. He wants to tell Saul too. And so after he tells the men not to attack him, it says that he got up and he went out of the cave and called after Saul. And he said, "My lord, the king." And when Saul looked behind him, David bowed with his face to the earth and paid him honor. So he's still the king and he's still honoring him, even though he's trying to kill him. And then David says, "Why do you listen to the words of men who say, Behold, David seeks you harm? Behold, this day your eyes have seen how the Lord gave you today into my hand in the cave. Some told me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not put my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For by the fact that I cut off the corner of your robe and I didn't kill you, you may know and see that there's no wrong or treason in my hands. I haven't sinned against you, though you hunt my life to take it. May the Lord judge between me and you. May the Lord avenge me against you, but my hand shall not be against you. As the Proverbs of the ancients say, out of the wicked comes wickedness, but my hand shall not be against you. After whom has the king of Israel come out? After whom do you pursue? A dead dog? A flea? May the Lord therefore be judge and give sentence between me and you, and plead my cause and deliver me from your hand." So David goes to him and he's like, "Why do you keep trying to kill me? Look, if somebody's telling you that I'm trying to hurt you, I'm not. And here's the proof. I could have killed you earlier today, but I didn't. And here's the proof of it. I just cut off the edge of your robe. As opposed to killing you, I just cut the edge of your robe off to show you that I was that close, but I chose not to do it." And so, who am I anyway? Like, I am as insignificant as a flea. It's like, why do you bring 3,000 men against me as if I'm an army? I'm just one guy. Why are you trying to fight me? I haven't done anything to you, and I don't want to do anything back to you. Like, I don't want this fight. I'm trying to avoid it. And so I just need you to know that I don't want this. I want this all to stop. And then he says, "Let God be the judge between us. He knows who's right and he knows who's wrong, and I'm leaving it in his hands." And then notice that he says what I said in the introduction, that wicked men do wicked things. And so that's what he's trying to say is, maybe you're a wicked man because you're doing this wicked thing trying to kill me, but I'm not a wicked man and I'm not going to kill you. I'm not returning to you what you're giving to me. Not going to treat you the way you're treating me because I'm not a bad person. And so it says, as soon as David had finished speaking these words to Saul, Saul said, "Is this your voice, my son David?" And then he lifted up his voice and he cried. And he said, "You are more righteous than I, for you have repaid me good, whereas I have repaid you evil. You have declared this day how you have dealt well with me, in that you didn't kill me when the Lord put me into your hands. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him go away safely? So may the Lord reward you with good for what you've done to me this day. Now behold, I know that you shall surely be the king, and that your kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. So swear to me, therefore, by the Lord, that you will not cut off my offspring after me, and that you will not destroy my name out of my father's house." And so David swore this to Saul, and then Saul went home, and David went back into hiding because he doesn't trust Saul, and that's a good bet. And so, upon finding out that David has saved his life, Saul is like, "Yeah, you're a better man than me. I have been doing bad to you, even though you treated me good, and you did good to me, even though I've treated you badly." Who does that? Who lets their enemy go away safely? God should reward you for this. You're a good person. And then he admits that he knows that God's going to give him the kingdom. And so he says, "When that happens, will you not destroy my whole family? Please let them live." And David's like, "Yeah, they haven't done anything. I don't even want to kill you. Why would I kill them?"